Morning, friends. Happy Saturday. How the heck you doing? Well, the media are telling us that this morning that the Glums, the Prince and Princess of Wales, paid £40,000 in stamp duty to secure their forever home. In the UK, if you didn't know, the government tax us on everything. They would tax us for literally breathing if they could. Fortunately, they can't do that. Get to the point, Martin. £40,000 is a lot of money to the average citizen in the UK, but I'll put this in the top left-hand corner. This is how much the Glums, between them, admittedly, get in revenue, excluding their personal and private investments, every single day. And the significance of the 666 is not lost on me, but at £66,000 every single day of the year, these two can afford to pay 40 grand. It's literally less than 3/4 of a day income from one verified source. And who's supporting this? The British people and the poorest people in the land. The poorest people in the UK might not receive this over 10 years, literally. But we accept the system in the UK. Everything's fine, nothing to see here. This is obviously all equitable and has parity. I was going to say paritable. Has parity for everyone in 2026. What an absolute joke.
So let me get this straight. We're supposed to be impressed because Prince William and Princess Catherine paid £40,000 in stamp duty on a property linked to a rent bill that most ordinary people couldn't afford in 10 lifetimes. That's the headline. In the middle of a cost of living crunch, regular folks are checking their bank accounts before buying eggs, and we're being served a story about royal housing arrangements like it's some heroic achievement. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan get dragged through the mud every time they spend a penny they've earned themselves. Funny how that works. One couple gets praised for existing inside the system, while the other gets grilled for building a life outside it. The double standard isn't hiding anymore, it's practically doing cartwheels in broad daylight. Look, this is the kind of story that makes ordinary people roll their eyes so hard they can see their own brain. Most families are sitting at the kitchen table trying to figure out how to stretch a paycheck until the end of the month. Rent is up, food is up, bills are up, everything is up except people's patience. Then along comes another royal housing story involving sums of money that most workers won't see in years, and we're supposed to nod politely? Come on, this is why so many people are questioning whether the monarchy still makes sense in 2026, not because they hate individuals, because the gap between royal life and ordinary life feels bigger than ever. The average person doesn't get applauded for paying housing costs, they pay them because they have no choice. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan walked away from the royal system and built lives where they're responsible for their own projects, their own income, and their own decisions. Agree with them or not, plenty of people respect the fact that they stepped out and took that risk. What frustrates many people is the double standard. One side gets praised for doing what is expected, the other side gets criticized for trying something different. And that's where the public starts asking questions, because at the end of the day, regular folks aren't impressed by titles, fancy estates, or carefully managed headlines. They're impressed by effort, they're impressed by results, they're impressed by people who earn their opportunities rather than inherit them. That's the conversation a lot of newspapers seem determined to avoid, and the more they avoid it, the louder it gets. Look, this is where a lot of ordinary people start scratching their heads. When you're standing in a supermarket debating whether you really need that extra carton of eggs, hearing about housing costs that run into hundreds of thousands of pounds feels like news from another planet. It's not even jealousy, it's disbelief. People are clipping coupons, hunting for discounts, and praying their landlord doesn't send that dreaded rent increase email. Then they open the news and see figures so large they need a calculator and a cup of tea just to process them. That's the disconnect. The royal world and the real world seem to be operating on completely different software, and no amount of cheerful headlines can hide that. The average worker doesn't get congratulated for having a roof over their head, they pay for it every month and keep moving. No fanfare, no headlines, no royal correspondence breathlessly explaining why it's all perfectly reasonable. Meanwhile, many people are asking a simple question. If times are tough for everybody, why does it always feel like some people are playing by a completely different set of rules? That's why debates about the monarchy keep popping up, not because everyone agrees on the answer, because more and more people are questioning whether a system built around inherited privilege still makes sense in a world where millions are working harder than ever just to stay afloat. And when those questions start getting louder than the applause, that's not a public relations problem, that's a reality problem. Here's the thing, people don't hand out gold stars for having a title anymore. Those days are over. In the real world, everybody gets asked the same question sooner or later. What exactly do you do all day? Your boss asks it, your customers ask it, sometimes your own family asks it. So it's not surprising that younger generations are looking at powerful institutions and asking the exact same thing. And honestly, that's fair. Most people wake up before sunrise, battle traffic, survive meetings that should have been emails, and spend 8 hours proving they're worth their paycheck every single day. Meanwhile, when it comes to royalty, some people are looking at the scoreboard and trying to figure out what they're actually measuring. Because showing up is one thing, making a meaningful difference is another. The public isn't impressed by fancy titles anymore, they're impressed by impact. They want results, they want purpose, they want to know what value is being created beyond photo opportunities and ceremonial appearances. That's why these conversations keep getting louder, not because people are angry, because people are curious. The old formula of they're royal, therefore they're important, doesn't automatically work on a generation that fact-checks everything and questions everything. And let's be honest, younger people aren't sitting around thinking, wow, inherited privilege is exactly what this country needs more of. They're asking tougher questions. Questions about accountability, questions about relevance, questions about whether status alone should still be enough. And once those questions start getting asked, they're very hard to silence. Because in today's world, influence isn't inherited, respect isn't inherited. Both have to be earned, and that's the challenge every public figure faces, whether they wear a suit, a uniform, or a crown. At the end of the day, people aren't asking for fairy tales anymore, they're asking for fairness. When life gets tighter for ordinary families, rent climbing, wages stretched, bills stacking, people naturally start looking at every institution and asking one simple question: who is this actually working for? That includes public institutions with privilege and influence, because support from the public comes with expectation attached. Not just appearances, not just tradition, but a sense that the system is aware of real life outside palace gates and polished ceremonies. Most people aren't sitting around demanding perfection, they're asking for basic alignment, care that feels real, not staged, attention that reaches beyond cameras, decisions that feel connected to the same struggles everyone else is dealing with. When that connection feels missing, trust gets shaky, and once that gap opens, it doesn't close easily. That's why conversations around responsibility keep coming back, not out of drama, but out of pressure from everyday reality. People want to feel like no one is floating above the same challenges they face. In simple terms, if an institution exists in a country, the expectation is that it feels present in that country, not distant from it. Look, the bigger picture here isn't just money or titles, it's whether old-school institutions can even survive in a world that runs on speed, receipts, and attention. Everything today is instant: clips, opinions, reactions, no patience for mystery or just trust us energy. But systems like the monarchy were built on the opposite: distance, silence, controlled messaging, slow movement. That clash is where all the tension comes from. Younger people aren't automatically impressed by inheritance or tradition anymore. They're watching creators, builders, people who actually show what they do in real time. At the same time, influence now lives in the attention economy. If nobody's watching, you don't matter, but if everyone's talking about you, you can't be ignored either. That's why certain figures stay in the conversation no matter how hard people try to push them out, while the institution itself struggles with staying relatable without breaking its own rules. And honestly, regular folks just see the gap and laugh a bit, because while everyday life is about rent, work, and survival mode, the system still moves like it's operating on a different clock entirely. That disconnect is the real story, not the headlines. Alright folks, that's the end of today's one. Thanks for watching. I'm your host Miles. If you made it this far, you're officially part of the real ones. Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read them, even the spicy ones. And if you enjoyed the video, hit that like, subscribe, and show some love with a super thanks if you're feeling generous. It really helps the channel keep going. Catch you in the next one. Stay sharp out there.